that I didn't know how to do it, and so I would try and I'd fall flat on my face. Well, this was one of the most royal disasters of evangelism that I've ever heard. So I'll share my disaster story with you. I was supposed to be training another girl in evangelism. So we had set the time up. We were going to go out on our campus at Texas Tech University. We were going to approach somebody, and we were going to talk about Jesus. And so I was supposed to be the expert. So here we go. So we head out, and I had this agenda of sharing the gospel with someone on campus. We walk up to the bus stop because my friend Kristen was like, there's a woman sitting there. So we go up, and I said, hi, introduced myself. How are you today? And I expected her to say fine. She didn't say fine. She immediately burst into tears. She's like, I'm awful. I just lost my job. I've got a small child at home who's sick, and I can't take her to the doctor because I can't afford it. My boyfriend just left me. I'm just desperate. I don't know what to do, so I'm just sitting here at this bus stop. Well, I had an agenda, and she just messed it up. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I walked away. I just walked away. Like, I think about that. That happened over 30 years ago, 25 years ago. In my heart, I still pray for that woman because of the damage that I did to her and because of the opportunity that was lost for me to show love to this woman who was broken. And she just kind of threw my agenda off, and I didn't know what to do. So I turned around and walked away. Of course, my friend who was with me was so mad. She has a lot more gifts in compassion and mercy than I do. And she said, what are we doing? And I'm like, this is how you share your faith. And no, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah, that was bad. And still, I go back and I think about that. And even today, it may not be so dramatic, and I may not be so ridiculously insensitive to people, but truth of the matter is, sometimes when I'm sharing my faith, I have an agenda. And if the person I'm trying to talk to isn't on my agenda, I can kind of let it frustrate me. Rather than that motivation of love and that heart that I have that Jesus has given us for people, rather than communicating that, I can get a little frustrated with them. And so I think some of the next things that I'm going to share with you have helped me. Just really practical baby steps on how would love respond as you enter into conversations with people. This is going to be a lot more about posture than it's going to be about exactly what you say. These are some posture checks as you're entering into conversations with people. The first one is just be present and listen. Follow the conversation and not your agenda. I think back about this woman at the bus stop often, and I think, what would it have looked like if I actually followed the conversation with her? That I wasn't so focused on my agenda, that I was so heartless and cold as to have her open up to me and I just walk away. What does it look like to enter in? To be present. Conversations are really interesting things. I think that moment that I shared with you has been a defining moment in my life that has motivated me to get better at conversations with strangers, to get better at that. I think when we all think about people that we have a heart to know Jesus, there are just people out there that we have yet to meet. We don't know their names yet. We don't know their stories yet. And then there are people that are a little bit closer in, right? I'm sure we all have people in our family that we pray for often. Those conversations can be a little bit more risky because you're in relationship with these people and their stakes seem higher. For me, that person in my life, or one of them, is my cousin Lucian. Lucian and I grew up together as cousins. We played together. His name is Lucian Matthias. When he was little, he said, but you can call me Wooshy Wooshy. Now Wooshy Wooshy is a world-renowned photographer. He's a filmmaker. He travels with Dan Rather and helps tell stories about things that he's passionate about. One of the things he did, he was embedded. He's been embedded with several troops taking pictures of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's won many awards, and he has done some really cool things, but he is very far from Jesus. I see the image of God reflected in Lucian, in the way he sees the world, in his heart. So he lives in New York City, and I was going to be up there, and I thought, this is my moment. This is a chance for me to connect with him, and I hope that the conversation can go to spiritual things. I prayed about it. I had friends praying with me about it. He said, sure, come into town. I'll take you to dinner. So I went with him and his wife. She works for National Geographic. She's got cool stories, and she's doing amazing things too. We go to dinner up in New York, and I just started asking questions. One of the questions I asked Lucian was, when you're taking a picture, he takes these incredible pictures. Do you ever know immediately you got the perfect picture? Like, do you just know that one is it? Or do you always look at a picture and go, I would have done it a little differently? And he was like, that's a really interesting question. And he started talking about his job and what he does. I asked him about taking images and pictures in the war, and I was like, what do you do with all that when you come home? You're in a war zone, and then you come back. Like, what do you do with all you've seen? Where does that go? He started talking about that. Eventually, on the train ride home, I was asking him a few other questions, and he was just telling me some fascinating things about how God inspired him. He didn't put it in those terms, but I could see, oh man, the Lord has wired him to do this. And after one of the questions, his wife goes, wait a minute, we were on the subway. She goes, I can't hear the answer. You ask really good questions. I want to hear what my husband's going to say. And Lucian stopped and he goes, that's her job. That's what she does. And it was interesting to me. I looked at him and I said, Lucian, do you think I'm asking you questions because it's my job? And he said, no, not really. He's like, I know you love me. And I was like, I want you to know, if you ever feel like I'm asking questions because it's my job, that's not true. I really do love you. I want to understand you. I want to understand your heart. It was a really interesting moment. As I said, I had the desire to share Christ with him, but I wasn't sure it was going to happen. And so as I was talking to him at dinner, this was before we got on the train, and we were talking about some of the things he had seen in war and some of the evil and injustice. He grabbed his wife's hand and he goes, Cheryl, this is a question I have for you. Why is it that my wife always feels guilty? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, she grew up Catholic. And you're a Christian. Why does she always feel guilty? And I was like, wow. The Lord opened such a great door to the gospel right then and there about grace and about how we can be free from guilt and sin, but we still have areas of our lives that are broken. It was a great and rich conversation. And I thought, gosh, that conversation just beautifully led into a gospel opportunity. After that, I also have to tell you something else. We were talking about the wild field. Gary mentioned his friend Danielle and her move to San Antonio and her getting involved in a church. I found out through that conversation another thing. When Lucian was embedded with the troop in Afghanistan, the troop he was embedded with was with my other friend, Nathan Wagnon. And Nathan Wagnon had been sharing his faith with Lucian for years in Afghanistan. The prayers that I'd prayed for Lucian were being answered by someone else. But he's moving. He's working. He's doing that. I believe that one of Lucian's portraits of Nathan is in their home now. He has stayed in contact with Nathan and his wife since then. But the Lord is at work. It's not up to me and my agenda to go up to New York and make sure that we get him to a point of decision. No, God's at work. We need to be present. We need to listen. We need to trust that the Holy Spirit's going to be at work when we do that. And through that love, opportunities for the gospel are going to come. Next is find common ground. Build a relational bridge, not a spiritual chasm. Interestingly enough, I I actually experience this inside the church a lot. I'm a 46-year-old single woman who is very involved in ministry. And I think in a church, sometimes we can make assumptions about people based on their demographics, right? So Terry and I were talking about this even on our way here today. We both find ourselves being stereotyped, and we both are like, wait, don't stereotype us that quickly. And so people might assume that I don't know anything about children or I don't care about children. That's not true. I'm very invested in my nieces and my nephew. I know a lot about children. I like talking about children. But as a single 46-year-old woman with no children, people can make that assumption. I have to do the work of finding that common ground with them and even breaking down some barriers, some preconceived notions that they might have about me. Tara has some preconceived notions, sometimes because she is a mom of 3. People assume that she's not actively involved in work and in ministry. And she's like, wait, don't assume that about me. I'm very involved. I'm very active. It's part of the work that we do every day. But I think when it comes to conversations with people, don't you, and I know I do it, if you see somebody that maybe has a hijab on, don't you make some assumptions about how different they are, and it would be really, really hard to connect with her. I'm not sure that we can find anything to talk about. And I'm like, no, we've got common ground. Remember the peace. Remember the prosperity. Remember the purpose. It doesn't matter if somebody seems so far away from you and so different from you. We've got common ground. And it's become a challenge to me. When I fly on an airplane, I have met some amazing people on airplanes. And to me, now, it's just the interesting challenge of what do I have in common with the people sitting next to me? Now, sometimes they don't want to talk. They put their headphones on, they go to sleep. And I don't bother them if they want to go to sleep. But sometimes they want to talk. And you can find common ground with just about anyone on a plane. And from that common ground, it leads to amazing conversations. I would say thinking of doing that is like thinking of if everybody was wearing a statement tee on for the things that they're most passionate about. If you judge that person or your ability to connect with them based on the statement tee that they have, then you're just going to walk away from those people. But it's like, okay, in spite of their statement tee, what are the things that I do have in common with them? Discover those things. Try to find out. Next, talk like a real person. It doesn't sound like it should be that hard, does it? But it is. Use words meant for people, not for the pews. I'm going to tell all of you, and this is true for myself as well, this is a blind spot for us as followers of Christ. We think we're not using words for the pews, and we are. We don't realize the language and the terminology and some of the things that we say that immediately feel like this esoteric language that people listening to us are like, I don't know what she's talking about. And how do you feel when people around you are talking about something that you have no knowledge about, you don't know anything about? What emotionally is your response? Like, think about it. Throw out some ideas.
I shut down.
Yeah.
Just like, always over.
Yeah. Tune out and think about your grocery list or something. Yeah. What else? Isolated? Yeah. Confused? Yeah, they seem kind of rude. Do you feel like they care about you? Or they're interested in you? When we sit there and think, how does love respond? There are just going to be some words and some things that we say and do, and we are going to continue to mess up. I think our posture on that, we just need to be aware that we can tend to do that. So look for cues. If people start to shut down, maybe ask a question. Did I say something? Or I would also say, as you cultivate more and more relationships with people who don't follow Jesus, try to get to the point in those relationships where you can really be honest with them and say, hey, are there things that when I talk about my faith, is there stuff that seems confusing or that you don't understand? And they're going to be some of your best guides. Neil has been that for us. He's like, flourishing? I don't know, what does that mean? Words like that, they're like, oh, okay. I didn't know that was a word that was kind of foreign, but okay. But you're going to need help you're going to need guides. And it helps kind of with your emotional quotient to read the body language of the people you're talking to. Try to take note of those moments when they kind of shut down and kind of take a step back if the conversation's going well. The last one is create a better story. Create a better story than the one that they've already heard. We talked about this a bit yesterday. There is a reality among people who don't follow Jesus that they are not sitting there going, if they find out you're a follower of Jesus, they don't generally say, no, but what denomination are you? Like, are you one of those like more progressive Christians or one of the more judgy ones? Like, they're not seeing us that way. We are what they kind of think of when they think of the word Christian. They don't think of all the spectrum of differences that we identify as. And so as a result, that has affected their story, the story that they understand of who Jesus is or what Christianity is, and of what you are, who you are. So as you think about your story, as you think about the ways that you're explaining who Jesus is, think about the story that this person maybe already understands as far as what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to follow Jesus? And you want to sit there and broaden. I have always had a deep longing, like I've produced some videos, and I thought, I want to create this video that kind of reflects the heart and image of God. And when people saw it, they may not agree with it. They may not say, I believe that, but that they would say, I wish it was true. Don't we have a story like that? If anybody really understood the love of God, if anybody really understood the grace and the mercy and what we have been given, what is freely accessible to us, don't you think if they understood it and really heard it, they would say, gosh, could that be true? That would be awesome if that was true. And that's how we need to communicate the gospel. We need to be thinking about it in those terms. So that when the people who hear it, there are things that can be offensive about the gospel, but are we painting the picture and trying to help them see the beauty, the love, and what's offered to them through a relationship with God? I want you to turn in your tables for the next few minutes. And if you look at page 33 of the booklet that you've been given, there are several questions. Pick 2 or 3 of those questions and discuss those at your table. Which of these things, that's on page 32, which of these things do you do well? Which do you think you're pretty strong at? Which of these things have you, like me, violated in the past? How do we find common ground on hot topics of our day, where biblical worldview is in conflict with the world? How can we still move past the chasm, the differences, and find common ground with people? And what language might I currently be using that might be hard for people outside the faith to understand? Take a look at those. Turn them with your friends and discuss 2 or 3 of those.